Hello, my friends. I need to start this one on the walk. I'm fuming. Not. I don't know if fuming is the right word. I feel a mix of many emotions. I think humiliation is near the top. Embarrassment. Here's what happened. I'm gonna spoil the whole thing. Just listen to my tomfoolery on this one. First, about halfway through, he offers a draw. I'm like, nah, come on. It's a bit of a stiff position, I'll admit, but now we can play this. So we keep playing, and then he thinks he messes up, and he tries to resign. And I'm like, well, are you sure? You still have, if I take this, then you can take that. And he's like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. So we keep playing. And then a blunder by a piece, a rook or whatever. I blunder a piece. And then I lose the game. But I make him suffer. I make it take as long as possible. Not down to just a king, but I had my pawns running and he had them all blocked, and then only when there was really no way to drag it out further without letting him promote a queen and all this, really. So what to think? I think it's all right. In the end, it doesn't really matter. Nothing matters. That's what we need to remember. That, he went e4. I went d6. He's like, what's that called? Very casual at the beginning. I'm like, oh, it's called the Pirc. How do you spell it? Oh, it's Pirc. He's like, oh, sweet. I'm going to look that up. Then he goes d4. I go knight f6. He goes knight c3. I go g6. He goes bishop g5. I go bishop g7. He goes e5. I go d takes e5. Just looking for that exchange idea again. And listen to how this goes. And then he goes d takes e5. And then I go queen takes d1. Queen trade. I'm trying it again. And then he goes rook takes d1. And I go knight to g4. Now that the queen isn't on that diagonal anymore, so I'm free to go over there and supposed to blocking my other piece, my light square bishop. He goes knight d5. And I go bishop takes e5. Oh yeah, because he's threatening to fork me again. Or not, I shouldn't say again, not this guy. The last time, remember that game where that guy pushed his pawns till I got squished? It was sort of the same messed up opening where he missed a mate and one at the beginning of my messed up opening. So it was like he was heading that way, and that kid, the guy, he comes and looks, and he looks at me, and I look at him. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not learning from my mistakes apparently. So I'm already in a tight spot, but he doesn't go through. He doesn't squish me as cleanly as the other guy did. It wasn't quite like that. He goes He went knight d5, and I went bishop takes e5 to protect that forking square on c7. He goes h3 to push my knight away. I go knight f6, blocking stuff. He goes f4, pawn to f4. I go knight takes d5, and he goes f takes e5, and I go knight to b4. He goes c3, because I was threatening both his pawns, but then I couldn't eat the pawn on the edge because I wouldn't be able to escape after that. It was a poison pawn. I've heard this term being used now for pawns that look free but are not, have some cost to them. So anyway, yeah, so I had to write knight 4. The knight on the 4th rank goes to c6, because the knight on the 8th rank could have also gone there too. So I'm catching these little things. He goes knight f3. I go bishop e6, blocking the progress of his pawns, I think. No, not yet. I go bishop e6. He goes b3. Oh yeah, I brought the bishop out with tempo because he has to protect that pawn. And then I go knight to d7. And that was a bit risky because he had a chance to bring his bishop out, and now that my knights aren't looking at each other, if he brought his bishop out to b5, then it sort of was going to mess things up. But he didn't end up doing that, so I was able to castle queenside later. Not yet. So anyway, he went b3. I went knight d7. He went knight to d4. Yeah, he went knight d4, and then I went knight takes d4. I'm getting too nervous about his things coming up in my zone, so I take that as opposed to the pawn. You go c takes d4. I go h6. Oh yeah, pushing that other bishop away so that I can then be free to castle. Yeah, so he goes bishop e3, and I go bishop d5, which I thought was very clever because it blocks his ability to move forward with the pawn. And then he goes rook d2, and then I queenside castle. And he goes bishop c4. I go knight b6. And he goes rook c2. And I go bishop e4. And he goes rook f2. And I go knight d5. And he goes bishop d2. And I go g5. And he castles. And I go bishop g6. And he goes rook c1. And I go e6. And then he goes bishop a5. And I go b6. Sorry, I've really lost the thread now. My mind is overwhelmed. And he goes bishop a6 check. And I go king b8. And I think I were already past the point where he asked for a draw. He offered a draw. And I was like, nah. It was somewhere around here. I have this, I thought to myself. Oh, man, what a silly goose. Well, I mean, I don't regret not taking that draw. It was the right thing to do. I'm pretty sure I had a winning position. It's a missed tactic that is my downfall, as you'll see in a bit. And that's fine. I shouldn't. It's important to know what part of yourself you should be angry at. The part that is the worst. I don't know if it's bad that I told him not to give up. Or if it's bad that I mean, the worst, from a human standpoint, it doesn't matter, right? Like, it doesn't matter that I ended up losing, even though he wanted to be done and give me the points. The points are eternal and last forever on some website. But if I don't win them now, I'm going to win them later when I don't hang my pieces, when I don't drop, when I don't do stupid mistakes, and I don't rush through these things, and I don't let all these little mental things mess me up, So, what can I say? I think it was okay to make him aware that it was okay to keep going. His position wasn't lost. And it's only the part that I should be mad about myself is playing too fast after that and dropping pieces. That's the bad chess that I played today. That's the only bad thing I did. But though I sure will not argue with anyone ever again about if they want to resign. Just okay, sure, whatever, go for it. Resign if you want to resign. Don't let me stop you. Because I'll just go ahead and lose the game. So, where was I? Sorry, I digress. Let's just pick up at the I queenside castled. He goes bishop c4. Oh no, we looked at all this. I'll say it fast. He goes bishop c4. I go knight b6. He goes rook c2. I go bishop e4. He goes rook f2. I go knight to d5. Look at this crazy position, eh? And he goes bishop d2. And I go g5. So that the bishop can't come back, and I am free to use my other rook. And then he kingside castles, and I go bishop g6. And oh yeah, now I'm protecting the pawn on f7 with that move. Oh yeah, and it's around here that he's like, there's nothing to do. Let's go for a draw. And I say no. And he goes rook c1. I go e6. He goes bishop a5. And I go b6. Yeah, it's right when he goes, and then that's when sorry. And he goes bishop a6 check. Before getting the other bishop out of danger, he brings the other one in with a check, and I go king b8. And then he goes bishop d2, getting him back out of trouble. I go knight e7. I wanted to place him somewhere so that I could get going to work on these central pawns. Get that beautiful open file, semi-open file for my rook. Get him working. And he goes rook c4. And I go bishop d3. He goes rook a4. I go bishop takes a6. He goes rook takes a6. Oh yeah, so bishop d3 is what messed him up. Because he saw that he let I'm going to eat his something. He thought he was going to lose his central pawn for free, and then he wanted to quit right then and there, just over a pawn. But listen, if he goes... So what happens is... he goes rook a4, so that after I take his bishop on a6, he goes rook takes a6. I'm going to take that pawn, but I pointed out to him that he can take my pawn on f7 after I do that. And then if I take his bishop, then he gets to take my knight. I tell him this. I'm like, Anyway, sorry. I'm going to stop whipping myself over that because it was a nice gentlemanly thing to do. What a nice guy I am. Rook takes f7. He takes my pawn. But then I don't give up my knight because I figure it'll be useful. All my pawns are on dark squares. For some reason, I thought that was a boon. And that my knight could hop around and gobble things up, and his one dark square bishop won't be able to do as much. And his one rook on the side can't do anything. He's sort of trapped there for now. So anyway, I go knight c6. I get him out of danger, and I'm threatening to get this other pawn. So he goes bishop e1, getting him out of danger. I go knight takes e5. And he goes rook e7, threatening to take back. And I go rook d6. And he goes bishop g3. And I go rook d1 check. And he goes king h2. And I go rook d7. Oh yeah, this is my blunder. You see how I painted myself into a corner where I thought I was being clever with rook d7, where if he took my knight, then I would take his rook. But of course, what happens after that, Mark? Well, after he takes that, if you just look one more inch over down the line, you'll see that his bishop is ready to take your rook over there. Oh, what a blasphemous blunder. What a blasphemous blunder. Horrible. I'm all frazzled. Embarrassing. But these are the things you get to feel when you play a game of chess. So, what a nice, safe place to experience, emotions. Whatever comes to you, you get to feel them, and then you get to go home and forget about it. Try again. Let it fuel your next. I worked really hard on my chess this week. Surprise. But this practice all sinks in like a month or two. You try to cram for an exam or something like that. It doesn't stick. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Let me finish this. It's already 18 minutes long, crying out loud. Oh man, I'm sorry. So anyway, yeah, let's say he went bishop e1 and I went knight takes e5, and he went rook e7 and I went rook d6. Yeah, and he went bishop g3 and I went rook d1 check, and he went king h2, and then I went rook d7 and he went bishop takes e5, and I'm like, well, okay, rook takes e7. And then he goes bishop takes h8. And now the game's only half over, or 2/3. And then I go e5. He goes king g3. I go e4. He goes king f2. I go king b7. He goes rook a4. I go king c6. He goes rook c4. I go king d5. He goes king e3. I go c5. He goes rook c2. I go b5. I go rook f2. No, he goes rook f2. I go rook e6. He goes bishop g7. And I go c4. He goes rook f5 check. And I go king c6. He goes rook f6. I go rook takes f6. And he goes bishop takes f6. And I go king d5. And he goes b4. And I go a6. He goes a3. And I go h5. And he goes g3. And I go g4. And he goes h takes g4. And I go h takes g4. And he goes bishop c3. I go king e6. He goes king takes e4. I go king d6. He goes king f4. I go king d5. He goes king f5. And I go king d6. And he goes king f4. And I go king d5. And he goes king f5. And I go king d6. And he goes g4. And I go king e7. And he goes king g5. And I go king f7. And he goes king h6, and I go king g8, and I can't think of another reason to make it go any further, and I resign right there. Oh, good times, you know. It's like being kicked in the pants, except it's not that bad. It's a slap to the ego, I guess. I don't know. Blundering pieces is just the worst. But I have to imagine that all grandmasters have blundered before. I was just being nice, and I never would have. I wanted to see how the game was going to go. I was excited to see the end game. Even though I was down, I wanted to see how it played out, and I got to see it as an experience. So, what can I say? No shame. No shame in any of that, except for not calculating. Again, playing too fast, being a bit too lighthearted for a tournament game. You know, if I was playing Blitz, or bullet, or rapid, or it wasn't rated, then this would all be fine. But you sit down to a classical game where the points are recorded and are there for till the end of time. This game will be there, and they'll be like, man, this is what happened to Mark on April 4th. He declined a draw. He declined a resignation, and then blundered his rook and lost the endgame. Utter failure on all counts. It all, it's like I wanted to lose. I'm not leaving this table till I lose this game. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be upbeat all the time. And you see, I'm still not crying. I learned a long time ago when I was a kid. You air your grievances with humor on your side. You say all the bad things that there are in your life. You can say them. You can make them funny to yourself. You get to choose, right? If you don't laugh, you cry. And I'm not going to cry. I feel fine. It's hilarious. But terrible. It's not terrible. It's just a game. It's just a game of chess. Here, you see, this is how I motivate myself. I never give up, you see. Everything is fine, and I'm going to do better next time. Oh, you better believe it. I think. Okay, I'm just rambling now. I got nothing to say. I've shared my emotions, what it's like. This is what it's all about anyway. You gotta see the dark side, the hard parts, Not just, oh, I played a lovely game and I dropped a piece. No, there's emotions tied to what you're doing. You spent an hour or 2 or 3 playing a game and you do something dumb and you have to lose the game. That's how it goes. Unless, your opponent does something dumb too. And I guess you hope for something like that. Or for an end game that, I'm very curious to see if I had played the end game right, if I could have gotten a pawn through when he was just down to a bishop, if I could have squeezed through. There was, lots of different ways to play it. So we'll see. And it'll be educational. So far, it's not something that you guys get to see because I only look on the computer after the fact. So sorry about that. Once I'm a bit more professional, I'll start sharing the computer lines with you. Well, I mean, you'll get to see as I go over this with the mouse. Maybe I'll quickly click on a couple things. That's what this couple extra minutes at the end is for. We can sort of look at the lines together and see what Lichess says about it. So yeah, okay, great, thanks. Suffer. That's not, yeah, okay. That's the moral of the story. You're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it. Like Harry Potter. Okay, goodbye.